of that. Whew. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my soul be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my Redeemer. Good morning, everyone. My name is Janet, and I am an alcoholic. And I want to thank this committee. I want to thank this committee for thinking enough of me to invite me to come and share with you and this seminar this weekend. It has been an awesome weekend. It has been an awesome weekend, and that skit last night, how many of you could identify with somebody or yourself in there? I could. Did you see yours? I saw me, and I saw a lot of you. But that's okay. You know, Cheryl is a beautiful lady. She's gifted and she's talented. And the works that she has done in Alcoholics Anonymous. But you know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we have a lot of gifted people. We have a lot of talented people. And God allows us, when we get sober and stay sober, to tap into those gifts. And it says if we don't use them, we lose them. And I believe that too. The big book says that I'm to share with you what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like today. And I'm going to do that in a general way this morning. The topics that the team or the committee put together, I could identify with all of them. As I was coming out here, one of the topics was alone in sobriety. And on my drive out here this weekend, I felt alone in sobriety. Because as you know, Carolyn was my sponsor for many years, and we did these conferences and seminars together for many, many, many years. And driving out here alone, all I could do was think about Carolyn. But I know that Carolyn's here this morning, and I know that she's been here all weekend. She used to tell me all the time, whenever I got up to speak, she would say to me, she said, Janet, make me laugh, make me cry, but whatever you do, don't put me to sleep. And so I'm going to try to do that for Carolyn this morning, because I know she's here. I am a native Daytonian. I was born and raised here in Dayton, Ohio. I'm the youngest of 6 children. I had 4 sisters and 1 brother. My brother passed away in 2000, a direct result of alcoholism, and I can say that today. I used to try to get him to come to AA meetings, and he would tell me all the time, all y'all do is smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, and tell lies. You know, so he wasn't having any part of Alcoholics Anonymous, but that's okay. I know hopefully Carolyn found him up there, and she roped him in. I don't know. But I was a rotten child. I truly was. I was spoiled. I was a daddy's girl, and I was just truly rotten, you know, just a brat. And I recognized real early that tears got me anything that I wanted. You know, I learned how to use tears, and they worked. They worked until I went to treatment. And during treatment, you know, we had this thing called Family Week. And the first day in Family Week, I'm sitting there in the circle, and my mother, and she's there, and my son, he's there, and I just bust out crying. And so the counselor says, Ola, what does it do to you when you see Janet cry like that? My mother said, it does absolutely nothing. Janet has been doing that all of her life, you know. So I knew then the tears were not going to work for me anymore. Anyway, as I said, I'm the youngest of 6 children, and had a fairly decent childhood. There was nothing that I truly ever wanted or needed that was not provided by either my mother or my father. But that changed. That changed real soon when I went to high school. I was one of those fast girls, and I didn't want you to know I was fast, though. I portrayed the quiet. I don't know why my nose is running like a water fountain. I need a tissue, and I know y'all tired of hearing me sniffle. But I portrayed this little innocent girl, but I was sneaky, and I was fast. Excuse me. I'm nervous, and my nose is running. I was sneaky and I was fast, and I wanted to date, and I wanted to do things that I thought other girls were doing. And my father was very protective. You know, he had 5 girls, and he wasn't, he was very protective of his daughters, and he didn't allow any young man to come to our house, And so when I wanted to date, I guess he saw in me what I was trying to hide from you. And he saw this fastness. He said, you're not dating anybody. You're going to go out of here and you're going to come home, you're going to come home pregnant. I'm thinking, oh, you know this. I ain't doing anything like that. Sure enough, his words came true. At the age of 15, I did get pregnant. And that was the beginning of my end for me. I thought, that son has become a blessing today, but he wasn't a blessing then at the age of 15. I was scared to death. As I said, my father was a domineering man, and you didn't do too many things to upset him or disrupt the household. He drank. My father drank that 2% beer, and he drank that Thunderbird, and he drank that whatever. He worked hard all day, all week, and on Fridays he would disappear, and he would come back on Sunday, and we might come home on Friday evening. And I used to say all the time, I didn't know if I liked my father better drunk or when he was sober. And the reason I liked him drunk was because, we can do what we wanted to do. And when he was halfway sober, he was mean as a junkyard dog. We couldn't breathe loud, we couldn't chew gum, we couldn't do anything. And I guess he was coming down off of a drunk, I don't know. But you know how we get when we don't want to hear noise. And you have a house of 5 children, you're going to have noise. And we had to sit there in the living room floor and watch Gunsmoke with him. And be still, don't move. But anyway, my father, he wouldn't allow me to go out and date, and he wasn't, having any of that. But I did that. And the only thing I could think about, it was 4 months before anyone found out that I was pregnant. And so my plan was to leave and go see my sister in New Jersey, and I was going to share with her. And I was going to tell her that I was pregnant. But you have that one girlfriend that you tell everything to, and she tell everything to everybody else. The day that I was leaving for New Jersey, there she goes. There it came out. My sister said, "What's this about this girl going around telling everybody that you're pregnant?" And as I said, I cried at the drop of a hat. Tears just rolled. My mother looked at me and tears just flowed. My sister looked at me, tears. So there all 3 of us sitting on this bed, just crying, And then it came out, well, who's going to tell Daddy? So they agreed that I needed to go on to New Jersey so they could prepare my father and for the news. And so there I went to New Jersey, and he called and he said he still loved me and that, everything was going to be okay and I could come on home. And I came back to Dayton, and everything hit the fan. That love that he proclaimed for me I felt was not there. I was everything but a child of God, The name calling started, the pain and the hurt that he inflicted upon me with his words. He was not a physical man. He didn't lay hands or whip us or anything, but the words that he used was pain enough. And the verbal abuse today, I know, can be just as destructive as physical abuse. And yeah, it's worse. And so I didn't understand, how could he tell me that he loved me? And I was the apple of his eye prior to the pregnancy. And now, I'm this little slut, and I'm this whatever, and I'm sleeping around, and I'm doing all this. And I couldn't understand that. This was the man that I cooked his breakfast when nobody else wanted to. This was the man who I cut his toenails when no one else wanted to. This was the man that, as I said, I thought I was the apple of his eye. But all that left. Today I know that my father suffered from a disease called alcoholism too, and he also suffered from being a father. And no father wanted to find out that their 15-year-old daughter was pregnant. He was hurt, and the only way that he knew how to deal with that hurt was to hurt back. And so there we were, I'm a blooming alcoholic and don't know it, and he's, even though I'm not supposed to claim that he's an alcoholic, I'm calling him an alcoholic because I see him in the big book when I see me, the Jekyll and Hyde character. And, so we're inflicting this hurt back and forth upon each other. It got to the point where it did become physical with my father and I. He would tell me things, to go in there and fix him a cup of coffee, and I'd tell him, you go fix your own coffee, And my sisters would look at me like, ooh. 'Cause, nobody talked back to Daddy. You didn't talk back to him. And he was like, what'd you say? And next thing I know, he's in my face and I'm in his face. And he would smack me and I would smack him back. And we would be in the middle of the floor fighting. And my mother would look at us as if to say, oh my Lord, like she's going. And I'm like, why don't you stop this? I couldn't understand why she didn't stop it. But as I read and I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, alcohol is a family disease. We all get sick. Everybody in the family suffers under the lash of alcoholism. So she knew that if she intervened in that relationship one way or the other, I don't know. I used to call my mother a weak woman. My mother is the strongest woman that I have known. Today she's 87 years old and she still drives, she still goes, and she's in her right mind, thank goodness. And but I thought she was weak back there because she would not stand up to my father. But she knew what would happen if she intervened. And she put up with all of our sickness, all of our madness. My brother and I, out of the family, 3 of us are, quote, normal, and 3 of us are alcoholics. One's in recovery, and the brother, as I said, he passed before he would not surrender to the fact that he was. And we used to fight all the time, my brother and I. And my mother would always go away. She was very active in the church, very dedicated to the church. And I know today that it's through the church that she maintained her sanity and her serenity. And I remember she went on this conference, and she told us when she left, if anybody died, just put the body on ice and don't call me. Because she was finally fed up too, But she was just like, it gets to that point. But going back to my father, our relationship just deteriorated until 1971. He passed away. It was the year that I graduated from high school. And I can remember not wanting, should I feel sad or should I feel glad? Because this man is no longer going to be causing me any pain in my life. But I went back to school, and I was thinking about my mother. Like I said, she was easygoing, laid back, and my son was probably now 2 years old. And so she latched onto my child. And thank God for mothers. Thank God for mothers, because she raised my son as if he was hers. And I think that was a good relationship. Even though she lost her husband, God placed this child in her life. And she was a blessing to me and to him in more ways than she could have imagined, because she saw the unwillingness in me. I said that I was unwilling, but it was it was fear. I had a lot of fear and a lot of unwillingness, too, to be a mother that my child needed. I just wasn't ready. I wasn't willing, and I didn't try. I didn't even try to be the mother. I was still wanting to party. I was a junior in high school. In high school, I was very active in everything. I was one of those girls that you probably didn't like, you know. I was involved in everything, but I still tried to fit in. I tried to fit in. I tried to be in this group, and this group, and this group, and this group, and didn't fit in any of them, you know. People-pleasing a lot. I was the person who was the class officer. I was on the cheerleading squad. I marched in the band. I sang in the choir. I did it all. But when I got pregnant and they put me out of school, because back then you were not allowed to attend public schools when you were pregnant. When I went back to school, they told me, Janet, you can't be on nothing. You can't be in anything. And so, you know, that crushed my spirit. You know, that crushed me. And so what I did was I started, you know, setting out to prove to you that I still could be this same fun-loving girl that I was prior to getting pregnant. And so I started partying. I started going out on Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights, and Monday nights. I graduated with my class only by, you know, God's grace. As I said, pregnant girls were not allowed to attend public schools. So when I did have my son, I was allowed to go back to school, and I graduated with my class. But the shame was there. The teachers looked at me different. My classmates looked at me different. You know, they would be going to a football game, and they said, we're all going to this game tonight. And then they said, oh yeah, Janet, that's right, you can't go. You got a baby at home. And that hurt. You know, that hurt. And so I had to prove to them that I am the same person. And so there I was, neglecting my child just to prove to them that I can hang with you. And that wasn't fair to him. But I had this father who rejected me. My son's daddy rejected me. When I went back to school, he was dating all the other girls, you know, in the class. And so now I got this little baby. So in my heart, there was no love. There was no love, and I didn't know how to express that. I was angry all the time. And it was not until I did another fifth step. You know, we used to always talk about how the layers of onion, recovery is like an onion. You got to peel off the layers. I didn't realize why I treated my son so mean, because I was angry at him. I was angry at my father, and I was angry at his father, and then I took it out on this child. I took that anger out on this child, and he didn't deserve any of that. My son, you see, I still haven't gotten over it. Then, you know, they talked about guilt, getting rid of the shame. I don't know about you, but it takes a long time. It's taken a long time, because I know. A lot of times I felt that I was teaching him a lesson, and it talks about this in the big book. I wasn't teaching him a lesson. I was trying to punish him. I was still punishing my child. And today we're building our relationship. He's in recovery today. I think for 20 of the 25, 26 years of my recovery, we had a love-hate relationship. So today, I'm rebuilding that relationship with him. I'm bouncing around, I know it. I know I am. Anyway. Yes, he is. Thank you. I heard someone say God is in charge, and God is in charge. Anyway, I graduated from high school, had no idea what I was going to do. My father died, had a GI Bill, went to school on his GI Bill. Started at Sinclair. Thought I would major in early childhood education so I could learn how to be a mother. That lasted a good quarter. As I said, I started partying, and when I started partying, that was it. I found out that if I drank, then I didn't have to think about the guilt. I didn't have to think about the shame. I didn't have to think about the fact that I had this little boy at home, and I'm resenting, and I'm angry, and I'm defensive, and no one understands. Every time I drank, I thought it made those feelings go away. It didn't make those feelings go away. It compounded those feelings. I know that now. I didn't know it then. I'm making a mess up here. But anyway, I went back to school, and I'm going to St. Clair Community College, and I'm going out every night. I'm working a part-time job at Kentucky Fried Chicken up on the corner of, I don't know if you know Dayton area, but it's 3rd and Gettysburg, one of the main intersections of the west side of Dayton. And everything would happen on the bird, they call it now, Well, this Kentucky Fried Chicken is still there today. Chicken was 55 cents for a 2-piece. I knew how much it was for 2. I knew how much it was for 4 because that's how much I knew how to pocket, And I would, figure it up in my head, and I knew how much to pocket at the end of the shift. But anyway, I met this guy. He would come in, and he drove this big, long Cadillac, and it was pretty. Had a big wheel on the back, big spokes. And I thought about me sitting on the other side of that car, of that seat, that passenger seat. I said, I'll look good sitting over there in that passenger seat. And I intended to make that my goal, to sit on that passenger seat. And I set out to do that. And what I didn't realize, that seat cost a whole lot of money. And it cost some money to sit there. And every time, he would pick me up, he said, well, you going to work tonight? And I'm thinking, work? I got a job, But he was talking about, going out there on the street to go to work. And I'm like, oh, no. Janet ain't going out there to go to work. Now, that's not to say that Janet never went out there and went to work. Janet went out there, but she did it undercover. I wasn't walking up and down the streets, but I was knocking on the side of your window. I did things like that. But when he said it was time to go to work, I would disappear, and he couldn't find me. And the next day when he did catch up with me, the abuse started. I don't know, I always got in kind of relationships where the men were real abusive, and that became a pattern for a short while. And I remember my sister asking me, one night I went to Detroit. I drove all the way to Detroit to pick up a package for him, and drove home, and the guy that came back with me told him that we had did some things together, and the man, he abused me so bad. The next day I knew that I had to get out of that situation. And so I called my sister, and she asked me, Janet, what do you want to do? This is the same sister that cried with me on the bed when I got pregnant. She said, do you want to get a job? You want to go to school? What do you want to do with your life? I said, I don't care as long as it's not in Dayton, Ohio. And so that began my first geographical cure. The next day we were on a flight, on a plane, and went down to Nashville, and I enrolled in Tennessee State. Now, when I got down to Tennessee State, I changed everything about me. I took off the wigs, I took off the miniskirt, and I put on the Elton John glasses, and I wore the Angela Davis afro, and the jeans, and I was in there. And I sat on the wall and smoked reefer all day long. until, again, the end of the first quarter. Grades were coming out, and I had promised my family that I was going down there and I was going to turn my life around and things were going to get better. Here I am down there and nothing's getting better. And I don't know about you, but I would always get that little inkling when I was messing up. That little voice would talk to me and say, Janet, you're messing up again. You're messing up again. And so I would have to tell myself and talk to myself that you got to pull it together. And so what I did was I stopped smoking the herbs so much because I had also tried the hallucinogens. And every time I would smoke herb, I would start hallucinating. So I stopped that, and I started the cocaine. Now, I didn't tell you, I don't even think I mentioned alcohol in this, but all along I'm drinking every day, and I don't even know if I even mentioned alcohol. I started drinking when my daddy was bringing home that beer. I drank at lunchtime in elementary school, but I don't think I became an alcoholic then. I just liked the way it tastes. You know, Kool-Aid was in the refrigerator, but beer was in the refrigerator too. So if you had a choice between Kool-Aid and beer, my sister and I, we chose the beer. We would pop some popcorn, drink the beer, and go back to school. You know, thought nothing of it. But after my son was born, I really started drinking heavily. Not only did I start drinking, but I started doing a whole lot of other things, trying to cover up the pain. So when I got down to Tennessee, when I enrolled in school, I stopped smoking the herb because, as I said, every time I smoked a joint, I would trip. And I didn't like that feeling. So I started doing the downers, anything that would make me down. And I would drink, I started drinking Rose. Not because I liked the way it tasted or the way it smelled or any of that, because no two bottles ever tasted alike. You know, no two bottles ever looked alike. Yeah. And so I started drinking that Reuniti. I used to like that commercial. It says, Reuniti, it tastes so good. You know, but I would look at my girlfriends and they were drinking that Rose and they would be out of it. And I'm like, I want to be like that. Because every time I had a lucid moment, all I could think about was, Janet, you messing up. Janet, and you got to get it together. So the more I stayed drunk or high or both, then I wouldn't have to think about you messing up. And so I would go to class and I would sit up in the front row because I knew that they were watching the people in the back cheat. So I would sit up front and cheat, you know. And I say it's only by the grace of God that I made it out of school with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And the reason I majored in criminal justice was because I wanted to work with young female adults, adolescents, and warn them about all the evils that men will do with your body and you if you allow them to. Because I had been abused so much by men at this point that I thought that if I worked with children, I can help, especially young ladies, I can warn them. That didn't work out either. But anyway, I did come home with a bachelor's degree in 1977. And not only did I come home with a bachelor's degree, I came home a full-blown junkie, totally strung out on heroin and alcohol, and I had no clue. I started stealing on a regular basis. I always used to steal fingernail polish and makeup and stuff, but I thought that was normal. It took me a long time to be able to go into a store and buy that stuff. Even, because I just felt that you shouldn't have to pay for that. But I had to learn that, once I started working the program, I had to learn that stealing became, it was not an option anymore. Because I don't want to go to jail, sober or not. I went to jail when I was hitting my bottom. My sobriety date is November the 21st, 1982. It was October of 1982. It was this weekend of 1982 that I was admitted into Good Samaritan Hospital. And the reason I know it was this weekend because it was the weekend that my mother was away, going away on one of her conferences. Like I said, she's very active in the church. She's a missionary. And I remember her telling me, Janet, you make the necessary phone calls and I'll be there for you. So it was October the 3rd, or October the 3rd that I went into the hospital. But anyway, I keep losing my train of thought. Where was I prior to this? Yeah, I was in, okay. I got the treatment as a result, not because I thought that I was going to physically die. I wasn't suffering any physical pains. What I had was a lot of mental pains, a lot of mental emotions that were going on. My brain was fried. I would come to and find myself in places like, as if to say, how did I get here? You know, what am I doing? As I said, that voice would talk to me all the time. And I would ask myself, I would find myself walking down the alleys because I didn't want to walk down the street. I didn't want you to see me anymore. I was too ashamed. I was coming home when people were going to work. And so I didn't want you to see me. I had been to school and I had this college degree, but yet I'm stealing your flowers off the porch for a fifth of rose. I'm out with this guy stealing batteries out of your car for a fifth of rose. I'm doing all these behaviors that I know in my soul aren't right. But again, I don't know that it's the alcohol and it's the drugs that are causing me to do it. The more I drink, the more I'm thinking that I don't have to think, I don't have to feel, I don't have to deal with it. I even tried to drink the good stuff and was stingy with it. I wasn't a sharing kind of an alcoholic. You know, when you came over, I hid mine and we drank yours. I didn't go to bootleg joints because I didn't want it, you know, I thought they were too expensive, you know, unless I carried my own bottle. But I stayed at home because I wanted to not think. I wanted to not feel. When I got to the place where I was cross-eyed and slobbering, then that's where I wanted to be. And then that way I didn't have to deal with anything. That went on for a while until my mother, as I said, she went on one of her meetings, and she said, make the calls, because that night I had gotten into a fight. I was stealing, that's what I was talking about. I was going into a store and we started stealing meat. I should say I started stealing meat. He was out in the car, you know, waiting, the getaway car, you know. And he told me, he said, I think we need to go into the stores. You know, I'm thinking, you know, at this point, you know, your body gets tired. Your mind gets tired. You know, nothing's working anymore. The more I try to get drunk, I can't get drunk. The more I try to, you know, the more I use, nothing's happening. And so he says, I think we need to go into the stores. And I said, we? You know, when did it become a we? And so he called me a B. And I looked at him, and I had a box cutter. And I pulled out this box cutter. Thank God for God being God, because I could still be in prison today. He grabbed my hand in the nick of time, and I have this cut on my chin. To this day, when people ask me, how did you do that? I said, I was in a car wreck. You know, because I don't want them to know, especially because a lot of children ask me all the time, how did you get that cut on your chin? But I could be in prison today because I had every intentions of trying to slice his throat, because it had gotten to the point where, as I said, nothing was working, and I'm tired. I'm tired. And so we got into a big fight outside my mother's house, and the neighbors called the police. And the police came and looked at both of us and shook their heads and just kept going. You know, it's kind of like they said, you know, we're not even going to deal with them. We're not even going to deal with this. So he left, and I went into the house, and I sat down on the couch, and I just cried. And I kept on saying, God, I can't live like this anymore. And I used to, you know, prior to this, I never stopped praying. I used to say that prayer all the time. Thou who lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. You know, I never stopped praying, even when I was out there. And God today, I know, heard those prayers. And Father, Martin says that he answered in his time. But I sat there on the couch and I wrote a letter to God. And I said, God, I can't live like this. For the first time, I truly told him everything that was happening in my life. I confessed and I called them sins. I said, all the sins that I have been doing, I am truly sorry. But help me get through this. Help me find a way. I don't know how long that letter was, but I wrote until I couldn't write anymore. And I sat there on that couch all night, and I waited until my mother got up. And as I said, she was going to a conference that next day. And she said, Janet, you make the necessary phone calls, and I'll be there for you. And so I called that same sister. She was my darling. We had darlings. And she was my darling. And she said, call Miami Valley Hospital. And I called Miami Valley Hospital. They asked about insurance. Now, even though I had been to school, I didn't have a job. I had even gotten married in there somewhere, but that would be a whole new lead if I tried to tell you about that. I didn't have insurance. I didn't even have a job because he didn't work, and I thought to myself, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm thinking, I'm going to work every day, and I come home and we still don't have DP&L. We still don't have a telephone, because we're drinking up the money. We're drinking up the check. We're using it. And so, as I said, if you can't beat them, join them. I probably could have made a good candidate for Al-Anon. But no, I wouldn't have. I never would have made a good candidate for Al-Anon. But because I was too selfish. I had to have something to drink too. I was going to use too. You weren't going to leave me out. But anyway, she said make those phone calls, and I made the phone calls, and the sister suggested Miami Valley. They asked about insurance, and I didn't have any insurance, As I said, I didn't have a job. They suggested I call Daymont West, and Daymont West will forever always be on the gratitude list of mine because they recognized that I was not only an alcoholic, but they also recognized that I was a drug addict and that I had some issues that needed hospitalization. They didn't just send me to an AA meeting. They said, we need to put you in a hospital. And it didn't happen just like that, though. The guy, he had to make some phone calls, and the more calls he made, the more I felt rejected. He said, I want you to go home, and I'm going to keep working on this. And he said, I want you to come back on Monday. Now, this is a Wednesday. No, he said, as soon as I can get you into the hospital will be on a Monday. This is a Wednesday. And I'm thinking to myself, Monday, I'll be dead. There is no way that I'm going to survive. I'm going to live till Monday. I had thought about suicide many times. I had sat on a bus bench many times. And I thought about throwing myself in front of that bus. But every time that bus came, I sat there, But the thought of having to wait till Monday, there was no way. And so when he kept making the phone calls, he said, go home, and if it gets that bad, tomorrow I want you to come here and sit here, and we'll continue with the calls. God started working immediately. When I got home, the phones rang. And it was the hospital, Good Sam Hospital, saying that they had a bed available for me right then and there. I asked that brother, the one that I didn't get along with, would he take me to the hospital? He had a beat-up pickup truck. And we rode to the hospital, but on the way, we stopped and got that fifth of rose. Didn't know what to expect, drank that rose, got to the hospital, got off on the elevator, and it said, welcome to Good Samaritan Mental Health Unit. Now, I didn't know I was going on the nut ward. I thought that I was going in the part of the hospital where you just rest. And they bring you your meals, and they come in and check your blood pressure, and you rest. This was a lockdown unit. And you had to ring the buzzer to get in. And so this little voice, one little voice saying, you don't want to go in there. The other little voice saying, help me hand those doors, Jenny, you got to go. You don't want to go in there. But I got up, enough courage and enough nerve to go into that hospital, into those doors, and I stayed there. I stayed there for almost 6 weeks. Now, most people will go in, they were going in and staying for 2 weeks max, but they would come back. They would go in and they would come back, and they would go in and come back. I went in, and I knew after 2 weeks, they said, Jenna, you are doing so much better. We think you're ready to go. I would fall out on the floor. And I would just have a tantrum. I said, oh, no, I can't leave here. If you put me out, I'm going to. I knew that if I left that hospital, I was going to die. 2 weeks passed. Jenna, we think you are doing so much better. And I just fall out again. Every time they told me that I was doing better, I couldn't leave. I could not leave. And so the psychiatrist came and he said, Jenna, I think, you're not crazy. He said, you have an alcohol problem and a drug problem, but you're not crazy. He said, and there's some help for you. And I'm like, he said, are you willing to talk? He said, have you ever heard of treatment? He said, there's this place called Samaritan Hall that I think that you can go and get treatment. And I knew that treatment cost money. I knew treatment cost insurance, and as I said, I didn't have any. And he said, I just want you to talk to this guy. And so he sent this man from Samaritan Hall out to speak to me. And the man came out, and that picture with Dr. Bob and Bill W. and the man on the bed, that's how I felt. I felt like that when the man was talking to me about treatment and about Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I had no clue. I thought I was a drug addict, because I was doing drugs on a regular basis. But I was drinking every time I used drugs. I drank every day. I had prescription drugs up the Yahoo. If the bottle did not say, do not mix with alcohol, I didn't even take them because I needed the alcohol to make the pills work. And so the man asked me would I be willing to go to an AA meeting. Now, I had been in this hospital for 4 weeks, and after 4 weeks, they never addressed my alcoholism. They never addressed my drug addiction. But they did talk about wanting to live. They talked about character building. They talked about self-esteem and being assertive, and they talked about feeling good about yourself. And I think I needed all of that because I did not have any self-esteem. I didn't feel good about Janet. I didn't even like Janet. And so when I got to my first AA meeting, I was on my way to my AA meeting. The man sent a young guy to pick me up. And the guy asked me, was I an alcoholic? I said, I don't know. I said, I don't. He said, do you drink when you're happy? I said, yeah. When you're sad, yeah. When it's sunny, yeah. When you... So every question that he asked me, I answered yes. So he said, you're probably an alcoholic. And so we got to the meeting that night, and Carolyn C. was chairing the meeting. There was something about the way Carolyn stood behind the podium. Carolyn was very tall in stature, and she had this ease about herself, this comfort in her own skin that I had been wanting all of my life. Because I was this phony person from child up, and I never knew how to be comfortable in my own skin. But there was Carolyn standing behind that podium, and the laughter in the rooms, the love in the rooms, the electricity in the rooms, I felt it in every fiber of my being. And when Carolyn was standing behind the podium, she didn't even give the message. She was the chairperson. So when someone has that much power, and we say all the time that this is a program of attraction rather than promotion, it was that attraction of her, being so comfortable. I used to say all the time, where have all the good people gone? I found them in Alcoholics Anonymous at my very first meeting. I don't know about you, but my very first meeting, I knew that this is where I belong. And I thought to myself, thank you, Father. I was not afraid. I was not one of those people either who were afraid to call on a God. As I said, I believed I believed in a higher power. I believed in God. I used to pray all the time. I grew up in the church. I used to sing Jesus loves me all the time. But I used to say, Jesus, if you love me, then why is this happening to me? But when Curlin, something about her and that meeting let me know, as I said, I knew I was home. I knew I was home. I went back to the hospital that night. I called my mother. I told her I had been to a AA meeting, and I felt right at home. And she said, well, I've been telling you for the longest you're an alcoholic, And that was okay. That was okay. Because the next night, I called Curlin. The guy told me to go around the room and get some phone numbers, and I did that. And I got Curlin's number. And I called Curlin. She didn't come pick me up, but she said this other little girl, not little girl, I'm always calling somebody little girl. She sent this other lady named Harriet to come and pick me up from the hospital. And Harriet started taking me to meetings from the hospital. And Harriet was a gift from God. She was my sponsor for the first 6 years of my sobriety. And she fired me. She fired me after 6 years because I got involved in a relationship that I had no business being in, a relationship with a married man, in recovery. His wife was it was a big mess. It was a big mess. But I thought he was just helping me, I had a home, and I needed someone to help me pay, not pay anything, but I needed someone to, when the electricity needed fixing, he could do that. When the plumbing went bad, he could do that, And so when I asked Curlin, I said, well, what am I going to do? She said, you're going to call a plumber, And so, but Curlin became my sponsor. She had never left the family. We were all still like, Curlin's sponsor was Yael's sponsor, and we were still kind of very close family. And there weren't that many of us in our area at that time, and so we went everywhere together and we did everything together. Curlin had a little car named Cricket, and we would be on the highway because Curlin was always asked to speak somewhere. And we would be up and down the highway all the time in her little car. And Curlin was a chain smoker and just smoked cigarettes after cigarettes, driving this little car. And the meeting would start at 8 o'clock and we would leave at 7:30, trying to make it to Columbus. A lot of times we made it, But Curlin was a big part of my sobriety. And when someone is in your life for that long, you can't. And she was, even though she was a friend, she never stopped being a sponsor. And I think that's important. Sponsors need to remember it's okay to be friends, but we got to remember that we must continue to be the sponsor first. Because when we cross that line, that friendship line into sponsoring, sometimes the sponsee, I found out, they don't want to hear us anymore. They don't want to listen anymore. They don't want to take suggestions anymore. And that has happened to me on a few occasions. So I've learned from that. But Curlin never stopped being a sponsor first. I have a wonderful sponsor today. She's a very spiritual woman. And when I'm going through a rough time, she'll say in a heartbeat, let's pray. And her prayers will get me through the next 24 hours. So I have a praying sponsor, and I appreciate that. I went to treatment from the hospital, and the most important thing I learned in treatment was that I am responsible for my recovery. And if I don't recover, then I'm responsible for that too. And this is not anything that was preached to us. This was written on the chalkboard, and every time I would go into group, I would read that sign. I am responsible for my own recovery. It does not matter what my child does. It doesn't matter what my father did, my mother did, or did not do. If I get drunk, it's my responsibility. I can't blame it on anybody but Janet. And I carry that with me today. That is the most important thing that I need to know. My sobriety date has not changed. Now, when I was in the hospital, when I went in there October the 6th, it did change. It did change. As I said, that husband that I married, he showed up somewhere between October the 6th and Halloween. And he showed up with some drugs, sex, and I think that's it. And there we were. I put 10 more holes in my arm trying to get high. Could not get high. I looked at my arms, I looked at him, and I said, I can't do this anymore. That was the last day that I have found it necessary to do any mood-altering chemicals or drink any alcohol. You know, I knew that my getting high days were over. I knew that my drinking days were over. I knew that my marriage to him was over. When I left treatment, he showed up at my house again, and he said, let's go. And I said, if you're talking about go get high, then you need to go on by yourself. And he left, and that was the last I saw of him for many years. Today, he's in recovery. Not only is he in recovery, I understand that he's preaching. So tell me God is not good. God works. You know, as I said, I did not have a problem with the spiritual aspect of this program. I was glad when they said that if I could get a God of my understanding, because I knew it had to be a God that was going to save me. I used to talk to people all the time, and I said, I can't live like this. I said, I feel like I'm on a ship that can't find the lighthouse. And my friends would say, ooh, that's cool. You know, there wasn't nothing cool about that. There's nothing cool about being out there on a ship and you are adrift and everything is floating all around you and you are lost. But I have found the lighthouse. And the lighthouse is here in Alcoholics Anonymous. God shines through all of you. And you don't have to struggle. You know, it says God could and would if he were sought. And I knew that to be true. I had to seek a God, and I had to understand that he was there for me. And I have never been afraid to call upon him. I don't know. I would hear people say, ooh, that God stuff scared me. It didn't scare me. I wanted help. And if it meant that that's where it was going to come from, I'm ready. I was that person who would stand in the corner on top of their head if it meant that I would stay sober. Because I didn't want to hurt anymore. I didn't want to live like that anymore. I was tired of the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the manipulating. I was willing to do anything to maintain my sobriety. Today, I'm still willing to do anything. Yes, I still go to a lot of meetings because I know if I go 2 days without a meeting, I get crazier than I'll get out. I have to go to meetings. I have a high-pressure job that some days I just want to hurt somebody, you know. And I tell myself, it's time for retirement because when you feel like this, it's time to come out. It's time to come out. But God keeps telling me, no, you can do it one more day. Because AA, 24 hours is not just about not drinking for one day. It's about living for one day. You know, I could handle anything. Harriet told me that probably the first month of my sobriety. Janet, you can handle anything for 24 hours. And some days I don't feel that. But today I know that to be true. If I can get through this hour, then I can get through the next hour, then the next hour, then the next hour. I got to keep taking it an hour at a time. Thank God for the basics, because I can forget so quickly that, you know, it's not about tomorrow, it's not about yesterday. It's about getting through this hour. I love you all. Thank you for allowing me to share.